Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a hard look at something that is literally operating in the background of our lives 24/7. It goes almost entirely unnoticed, and yet it is completely fundamental to our very existence. We're going to explore a global economic and existential crisis that goes way beyond the headlines you usually see. This is all about the invisible foundation of human survival itself. Section 1, A World Without Nature. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what we're talking about, we need to strip away the noise of our daily lives for a second. I want you to try a thought experiment. What if you woke up tomorrow morning, looked out your window, and heard absolutely nothing? No birds singing in the trees, no bees humming in the garden. Imagine looking out at the ocean and knowing there isn't a single fish left, or looking at the horizon and seeing forests that literally don't breathe anymore. Just a deep, deafening silence. Now, I know that sounds like the cold open to some dystopian sci-fi movie, right? But the crazy thing is, it's a fast-approaching reality if nature keeps dying off at its current rate. It wouldn't just be a quiet world, it would be a completely broken one. We're talking about supermarkets with totally empty shelves because the crop systems just failed. We'd face critical medicine shortages because the exact plants we need to synthesize life-saving drugs vanished before we could even harvest them. We'd see catastrophic floods, intense heat waves, and ultimately absolute economic collapse. Actually, scratch the idea that this is just about saving wildlife. This is strictly about human survival. Section 2. Defining the invisible foundation. Okay, let's dive into this and clearly map out what this invisible foundation actually is. Buried under the daily avalanche of politics, social media, and constant distractions, there's a really critical date. Tomorrow, May 22nd, marks the UN's International Day for Biological Diversity. It's an entire day specifically set aside to recognize this exact crisis. And yet, it gets widely ignored by a public that just hasn't fully grasped what's really on the line here. The crucial starting point is making sure we're on the same page about what biodiversity actually means. It's not just some fancy buzzword you hear on wildlife documentaries. It is the variety of all living things. We're talking plants, animals, insects, the vast oceans, deep forests, right down to microscopic organisms. But more importantly, it's the invisible web connecting every single one of them. It's the oxygen pumped out by the rainforests, the bees pollinating our food crops, the coral reefs acting like a shield against storms, and even the unseen bacteria in the dirt that actually allows our food to grow. We are entirely dependent on this web. So, how in the world did we disrupt this web? Well, for thousands of years, humanity just kind of coasted in a natural balance. Forests regenerated, oceans recovered, but then came the 18th and 19th centuries. The Industrial Revolution kicked off an era of massive, unchecked extraction. We cleared forests for farming, polluted rivers with factories, and rapidly exploded the size of our cities. And sure, that brought us incredible economic prosperity, but it came with a massive, delayed, hidden cost. By the late 20th century, the warning signs were blinking bright red: skyrocketing extinction rates, massive deforestation, dying reefs. That eventually led to the historic 1992 Earth Summit in Rio, which was a desperate scramble to conserve what we had left. Yet here we are, over 30 years later, and scientists are warning us we've officially entered the sixth mass extinction. And the worst part? This one is entirely driven by human activity. Section 3. The trillion-dollar economic emergency. Now, if the ecological history doesn't quite grab your attention, let's pivot to the cold, hard numbers. Because this is not just an environmental issue, it is a massive trillion-dollar economic emergency. Think about this number for a second: 1 million. Right now, scientists estimate that 1 million species face imminent extinction. A lot of them could be wiped out in just decades. Think of it like a giant tapestry. If you pull 1 million threads out of it, the entire fabric threatens to tear. And for us, that fabric is the global economic network. The data brilliantly illustrates exactly what's at risk here. More than 50% of the entire world's gross domestic product depends directly or indirectly on nature. Agriculture, fisheries, tourism, pharmaceuticals, construction, even fashion, they all fundamentally rely on healthy ecosystems. If biodiversity collapses, half of the global economy just collapses right alongside it, literally. In economics, they call these natural benefits ecosystem services: clean air, fresh water, fertile soil, pollination, climate regulation, and flood protection. These are just nice-to-haves. They are essential services worth trillions of dollars annually that governments and corporations rarely ever put on the balance sheet. Let's put that into perspective. Natural pollination alone, that's worth hundreds of billions to global agriculture every single year. Imagine if pollinators like bees simply vanished. Crop production would instantly crash. Food prices would go through the roof all over the world. Farmers would lose their incomes, leading to huge supply chain nightmares, massive insurance crises, and total agricultural instability.
Section 4. The human and climate cost.
Okay, so numbers and charts tell one part of the story, but the real-world human impacts tell another. Ecological collapse and climate change, they are two sides of the exact same coin. They feed off each other in this terrifying vicious cycle. When forests get destroyed, natural carbon storage vanishes, which drives up temperatures. That destroys wildlife habitats and scrambles global rainfall patterns. Same thing with the oceans. When the water warms up, coral reefs die. Fish populations completely crash, which devastates coastal communities and drastically reduces the Earth's ability to regulate its own climate. The bottom line is, you absolutely cannot solve climate change without protecting biodiversity, and vice versa. They are a package deal. And man, the fallout from this cycle hits humanity hard and fast. Remember, behind every grim statistic of a lost forest or a warmed ocean, there is a very real human story. It's the farmer staring at a totally failed harvest because the pollinators never showed up. It's the fishermen returning with completely empty nets. It's the indigenous communities losing the lands their ancestors protected for centuries. This is what drives hunger, poverty, forced migration, and disease. And the ultimate tragedy here, the poorest communities across the globe are suffering the most severe consequences, despite having contributed the absolute least to the environmental destruction.
Section 5. How humanity fights back.
I know the situation sounds incredibly severe, but listen, we are not powerless. Let's move to the most important part of this explainer and see how we can actively rewrite this narrative. Action starts at the micro level. Small steps by millions of people create immense collective impact. First off, educate yourself about local ecosystems, because awareness drives action. From there, you can vote with your wallet. Support sustainable, eco-friendly businesses. At home, cutting down your plastic and food waste relieves massive pressure on our waste systems. Get out there, plant trees, and advocate for green spaces in your community. Throw some backing to the NGOs and conservation groups out there doing the heavy lifting on the front lines, so they have the resources they need. And hey, never underestimate your digital voice. Sharing this kind of information raises the vital baseline of public awareness big time. But let's be real. Individual action has to be matched by massive macro-level leadership. We need structural change. Governments absolutely must rigorously enforce environmental laws and actively invest in transitioning to sustainable economies. Businesses have got to stop treating the natural world like an infinite free resource and start baking long-term ecological responsibility into their core ethics. Schools need to equip the next generation with deep ecological literacy. The media needs to elevate this from a secondary topic to front-page headline news. And above all, international cooperation must radically expand because, frankly, an evaporating ocean or a burning forest absolutely does not care about national borders.
Section 6. The ultimate choice.
This brings us to the climax of our explainer. We have reached a definitive turning point in human history. We are standing squarely at a crossroads, staring down two wildly different futures. On one side, if we just continue business as usual, we guarantee ecological collapse, escalating climate disasters, massive food insecurity, and crippling economic instability. On the other side, we can choose a massive course correction. We can embrace sustainable development, green innovation, and aggressive ecological restoration. The choice between a healthy future and a broken one is still entirely ours to make. But we've got to be honest, the window of time we have to make that choice is rapidly slamming shut. I want to leave you guys with one absolute, undeniable truth. Nature can survive without humanity, but humanity cannot survive without nature. So the ultimate question isn't really whether biodiversity matters. The real question is, are we going to wake up and save our foundation, or are we just going to let it quietly crumble right beneath our feet?